So welcome everybody. We can start with the lectures. And the first lecture of tonight will be given by Audrius Ambrasas from Lithuania. His office is also called Audrius Ambrasas Architecture. And he will give a lecture with the title Architecture as a Puzzle. So welcome Audrius on the stage.
Vakara. It's a great pleasure to take part in that event and starting warming up you before the awards ceremony. My short lecture will be in 3 parts. For the starter, I'll introduce you in some of our selected works. Our studio, the main dishes will be few competition entries, that is most sustainable architecture because it will be never realized, and to the dessert it's what small project that is under construction. Selected works, it's last maybe 15 years. It's in Vilnius at bank office with big public space like a terrace, another business center in Vilnius, Baltic Hertz it's named, one project in Riga, one headquarters for the company who work in agriculture field. It's near the Kaunas. Conversion of former industrial quarter in Vilnius for the offices, commercial spaces and food market. Also small building near the river in Vilnius. It's like a creative industry center. Also dwellings in Vilnius, in old district named Žūrijas, inserted in historical surrounding. Sometimes we do also villas. One villa show our values that we try to connect inside, outside, and that new building will be like a part of the nature. The last our project realized it's in Ventspils. But it's a bit boring to talk about realized projects always. Maybe I present some few competition entries that we personally, our office studio, like it. Why architects take part in competitions? It is maybe several purposes. One, of course, you want to be commissioned for that project, but also it is like a training, like an exercises for architects, and also it is purpose sometimes that you can make like an alternate project. Or you disagree, for example, with the competition tasks of conditions, and you have an idea, for example, to solve that puzzle in a different way. One competition we take part in Finland, in Tampere, it is Sara Hilden Art Museum competition. It was the plot is near the former factory, near the river with rapids, and near the park. It was, I don't remember exact, around 400 entries. That is one of that kind that is taking part in competition more like a sport, like a exercising. our idea was very simple. We have like a brick. It is the program that client asks. They recommend that it do everything over the ground, not use underground. And near it is the rapids, the water, and we do like a brickstone, our building polished by the water, that it inserted near the park, near the very rectangular and big boring surrounding buildings. It's like a big elephant comes with red bricks, soft surfaces, and the connection through that building to the park. And here you see the entrance, stairs up, cafeteria, and all premises that need for the museum that the client asked. And the plan looks like a little bit like a submarine. Also, the section is soft. We do all the program here, and on the top it is universal hall for changeable exhibitions. From one part it is for visitors. Another vertical connection is for maintenance and installing exhibitions. Here you see because the limitation about the height was no, and we do all that program here, and maybe do the cupola like a maybe new landmark for the city, but of course they don't need that. The space of the changeable exhibitions, and we want that new building comes from the surrounding, growing up, all surrounding, all factory, it is from red bricks, and we try to, in that soft manner, create our building. And it also looks like a part of the nature between the trees and forming the new silhouette of Tampere. Another competition we presented, this situation is in Vilnius. A few years ago, not maybe more than a few years ago, was competition for the new concert hall in Vilnius. The place where was decided to build new concert hall, it is in that place where in 1955 year was built a house for culture of trade union. They have a hall for 1,000 people. And it's a typical project. I don't remember exact from which Soviet country, but they put on the top of the hill. That hill was a bit higher, and there was former cemetery. You know, they make a floating kit and put that building. And now it's demolished that building. And the task competition was to build exact here. The plot was here. You must build new concert hall here, and like always, new concert hall on the hill. It's like a new landmark with that, how it's named, wow effect. But we know and feel that place, of course, very well. Our studio is near, and we're walking through every day. And that building on the top, in our opinion, maybe not the best thing is. And we suggest build new concert hall, not on the top of the hill, but like a part of the hill. That the main entrance will be near the city, that city spaces connect and prolong to inside. We put here the main hall, a smaller hall, that cafeteria, and that for museum, and that you easy to reach that building, not on the top where to go because city center is here. Easy to reach and easy to connect with the hill, with the nature. And also near that building can be stairs that connect upper city with city center, which is down. And that was an idea to open all this top of the hill for like a park, that people can spend time here, because from that it is a good views to the city. Here you can spend and view to that. You have that panorama not from the foyer of the new concert hall, but every day from the ground, and the building connection with the building is a terrace that you can go around that building. And we suggest that new landmark will be only the green trees, not new nice building maybe. But of course it's only our opinion that we, as I say, we tested our ideas and do what we want, like a manifesto. Another competition is also in Vilnius, near that hill. It is the municipal polyclinic. That parts of the building, that part is built in 1919th around, and this newest part it's 1987, and that built in according to plans to widening that street, you see, that perimeter. And in Soviet time was planned to demolish that building. That building will be bigger maybe next, and also demolish this, and near the here's a border approximately of old city. Near the old city make a white street, but anyway it's not happening. And now you see standing one building near the street line, another up, and together they looks a bit strange. And the competition was that to see the possibility in that plot to build extension of the polyclinic. We thinking about how to deal with that different positions of the buildings, and we start maybe put the program in the same line like that newest part of the polyclinic, and put approximately the program, and notice that the height for that street, in our opinion, is too big. And of course, it's a bit strange, you know, together all that buildings. It's like 3 different buildings, and we try to connect up, and of course add additional premises there. And that was view of that. That was strange that we won that competition, but anyway, later municipality decided that they have no money at all for that, and they canceled everything. But anyway, we suggest like that solution on here on the connections. We designed also the premises. They connected with the older part of clinic. Yes, and our idea was to create the complex for all these different buildings to connect to one complex. Next also competition, it's around here, not far. Situation is that building, it's built 1957. It's also typical school project. In Vilnius, it is several built like that in that time. What is interesting that here shown the pedestrian path that people use and it's popular. Now it is then refurbishment of that all green area. It was the point where the historically was that how to say, drills and water comes to old city from here. And also it is the pedestrian flows here, and you see that Stalinistic building stands on, and that building was sold for private investor, and private investor decided to do here change the fund. They make the flats. You know that to make flats in school building, it's not easy. Wide corridors, wide these distances, and anyway, this building standing, you know, it is a slope, but it's standing like on the table with entrance with the stairs. And we think how to solve that puzzle, that to make human entrance, how maybe to integrate more that building in surroundings in the city, that this, you know, bombastic Stalinistic entrance where you cannot reach easy, to change to the human scale, to cozy places. And we cut that building. We connect this pedestrian path and also solve that problem. Here we create entrances to the flats, and first ground floor it is possible to use for cafeterias, and on the access of that street you can cross that building and connect to the green areas. But we try to keep the architecture of that Stalinistic building, add some windows that it's neat, but in same style, balconies. And what we do in another side, we add 2 volumes, terrace volumes, and that part where we cut from there, we add to new this addition, and this good flats with terrace, with views to the panoramas. Another goal that it help us that that middle part of that building, it's difficult to use, or you must add maybe additional staircase here, because now we use the existing staircases, and we really have 2 blocks. And that building like go from the top to the green areas down. It was interesting that the client chose us for next stage for the competition, asked to do some maybe corrections. He maybe liked it, but anyway, it's a bit strange that our city architect say that maybe that this decision not good for that function. That if it will be public building, it will be maybe better for the living. It's maybe not. And the client say, okay, it's a very nice project, but no, we will do regular project. As I told for the last show, one project that is now under construction. It's also in Vilnius. Vilnius Urban Fabric, it's, in it's a lot of places where it's unfinished. You see the perimetrical buildings near the riverfront, but the part is unfinished. You see the directions of former maybe streets, smaller streets, and there it is. In that place, it is 2 plots, 2 owners, and if all the time in all city planning documents was idea that that part must be built, and all this riverfront must be finished like a perimeter. And we was commissioned to make project for that plot, and we make a project approximately the same scale like near. For that plot was competition, chosen project, and also prepare a project approximately in that scale. And that happened at a strange situation that active society who fighting for heritage values, that to keep heritage, and they from that society appeared opinion that it's not good to build here buildings, that one of the Vilnius historical center value is that multi-layering, that you see different layers, you can see the former structures, panoramas, and it's strange that opinion later go to the law, and from that point it's fixed new point from where you must check all buildings, and from that point you must that panoramas is valuable and you must keep it. And that was the question, what to do, how to build the perimeter, how to keep panoramas. That client asked the court what to do, and they was fight with the lawyers. Our client asked maybe we can find solution, maybe change the project, that it's not necessary to fighting with heritage authorities. Because anyway, the heritage enthusiasts say that, okay, you can build, but maybe 2 stories buildings here. But architects say, but it's strange in that 4 or 5 stories perimeter built 2 stories building. Late in discussions, we go to the concern that maybe the valuable view is the cathedral tower, that place. And this is lay on our plot. We have a lot of sketches, we're trying to do something, but then we make it in easiest way. We make a respect for that view. And in the same time, I hope that building will be in the same scale like buildings near. And you can see the panoramas, far panoramas, and what we do also, we suggest for the client, he say, okay, it's great additional value for the flats. We create terraces on the roof. One idea was to do flat roof with the terrace, but it's not allowed according to the heritage protection, because in that area all buildings must be with sloping roof. Okay, that we make the slope, and if it will be happen at everything good, will be terrace on the roof. If that view from that point important, maybe good view from that terrace to that direction. And what I can want to say that our studio motto is that architecture is a puzzle. When architect must deal with a lot of different requirements, and sometimes that can be solved on out-of-the-box thinking. Not every day, but sometimes happen it, and when it's happened, I like it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Audrius, for this lecture. And the next speaker is the architect Bert Gellynck from Belgium. Bert makes maybe a connection between Latvia and Belgium because he was a teacher at the RISEBA in the past. So he will give a lecture about his works from his office, 1010 AU. So the floor is yours, Bert.
Thank you, Martin. Okay. Thank you so much for having me here. It's an incredible honor to be able to speak in this event. 1010 Architecture Urbanism is a small practice. We are 2 partners and 6 to 8 collaborators. We are located in Brussels, and we are mainly working local. So the majority of our commissions are happening in Brussels and surroundings. So for me, being here, I was questioning before today, like, how can I bring a meaningful contribution to this event and to Riga? Because of course we are 1,500 kilometers away, and during these last 2 days we visited many projects, and we see lots of similarities, but also lots of differences. So I was breaking my head over the question, like, how can I make this lecture, how can I give it a meaning to this event? And actually I would like to start from a quote of the chairman of the jury of Mountain, who wrote in the brief of the award, I quote, "The Latvian Architecture Award aims at promoting the understanding of architecture as a socially, environmentally, and aesthetically conscious practice." I think it's a very strong statement. It's also a very challenging statement. I think it's nothing new, actually. We all know that, but at the same time, we continuously struggle in our practice how to give this a form. How can we apply these values, this moral compass in a way? How can we give it a place in our work? And how can we make it also the driver of the things we do? Because, and then perhaps I'm going to show you some dramatic images in a way also to put things too sharp. What does it mean, this social? And what does it mean, this environmental? What does it mean, this aesthetical? Because we live in a world that is changing at an extremely fast pace. Again, I think this is something you know. We are facing gigantic humanitarian challenges. This is an image from a refugee camp in the north of France, which is luckily not existing anymore, but which is actually showing that the way we imagine our societies, the way we live together, is changing. Our ideas of the small community and the village, as we have seen actually a lot of them, is changing, is dynamic. Humanitarian crisis like refugee camps is perhaps something that is more actual, is very actual actually in Belgium. But I can imagine here that you're facing other humanitarian challenges. I can imagine the aging population, but I also can imagine the shrinking regions, people who are leaving the country, finding their luck somewhere else. And then what do you do here? How do you deal with that? There are environmental challenges. This is also an image from our country, where last year we were actually for the first time confronted with a huge flooding event after a peak rain in a place that we would call our daily living environment. And suddenly this whole environmental issue was not something that happens far away, but happens something that happens also around the corner. Again, this environmental crisis has local variants. I can imagine this is an image of flooding, but in other countries it's about heat, it's about drought, it's about crisis in agriculture, which is all related to this climate change. And again, we know that. Scientists, they are telling it to us all the time. And they have all the data, everything is at hand, and the question is, what do we do? There's a lot of activists who do the same. They try to change our behavior by organizing events on the street that literally interrupt our daily habits. They try to change the way we do things because the world is changing, and so we will have to change. But what is in there for us architects? And this is a question I have actually been breaking my head over for many times. And because we are not scientists, but we're also not activists. So what are we actually? How can we in our daily practice, and our daily practice is small, is local, we don't have the possibility to enter gigantic projects. How can we anyhow work on this change? And then I got extremely inspired by this quote from a German historian, Philipp Blom, who wrote in this book, The Great Wall Theater. He writes, "The climate crisis is not so much an economic or environmental crisis, but mainly a crisis of imagination. We cannot imagine how to change things, how we can adapt to this changing world." And I think it's an amazing quote, because imagination, I think, is one of our big strengths as architects. This is what we're good at. When we are in a building process or a design process, we have to collaborate with many specialists who are very often better in, for instance, in questions related to structure, questions related to soil, questions related to water, etc. But there is something that we can do as architects, is to link all this knowledge and to bring it into a story with imagination. And I think history proves that. I just took two images of fantastic projects. The Museum of Contemporary Art of Oscar Niemeyer, a very classic example, of course. But it was, this work shows how architecture can be uplifting, how it can bring people together, how it can bring complete communities, or even countries in this case, around one idea. This is another project, perhaps not so famous, but which is for me also an incredible uplifting imagination. It's actually doesn't exist any longer. It's called the Blur Building by Diller and Scofidio, an American group of architects who installed a kind of a cloud into a lake in Switzerland. And I think it's an amazing way of bringing literally bringing you to in the clouds and making you feel how it would be if you would be walking in a cloud. So we have this power, we have this potential. What can we do? I'm just going to try to show you, based upon 2 projects that we have been working on the last couple of years, what we can do. How can we deal with these social questions? How can we deal with these environmental issues? And how can we bring aesthetics at play into making spaces for the daily life? The first project is Molenwest Square. Is a project for temporary occupation of a former a railway site in Brussels. And the program of this project is an exterior playground, a meeting place for mainly for youngsters, kids living in the surroundings, who is lacking a lot of playgrounds and spaces to play. To give you an idea, this is where the project is located. Is situated on this side. So we see a very kind of a mix of a piece of city which is very much 19th century, containing lots of big warehouse buildings, and then on the other side of the railway tracks we see a kind of more, slightly more 20th century urban tissue with a park, and then lots of social housing blocks where mainly people live with a certain disadvantaged background, and also a lot of people, majority of people with migration background. In that sense, it's a quite complex piece of city. It's complex in its form, it's complex in its infrastructure. There's lots of things coming together here, and so we see big car streets, railway tracks, metro, tram. There's a lot of traffic on the spot, but also socially it's very complex. Brussels is a city which is tremendously cosmopolitan. There's a lot of nationalities sharing the same space. And this is a challenge. It's not easy. It poses a lot of questions on the level of language, but also on the level of culture and cohabiting the same space. The location, as we found it, was a dump. It was a place which was used for the storage of building materials. But there are plans for this place. Already for a couple of years, the Brussels region is working on a master plan to to transform a part of this former railway yard into a new piece of city with a larger park and a more urban block, a combination of public functions, commercial functions, housing, and eventually also a new museum building that will appear on the corner. But all these plans that take a lot of time. I don't know how long they take here, but in Brussels, this is going to take at least 15 or perhaps even 20 years, if we are optimistic. But at the same time, the needs are there today. The needs for housing are there today. The needs for playing is there today. And this was actually one of the most urgent challenges in this project. How can we make, while waiting for this future to come, how can we already provide a space to play where children with a mainly disadvantaged backgrounds can find a place where they feel safe and where they can, in a way, also receive some social help. So the program was social, but we also wanted to give it architectural ambition. It's not enough just to install a couple of boxes and write down, here's where you can play, here's where you can meet each other. We think that even if you work in a disadvantaged spot like this corner, that we can, and even with low budget, that we should try to be architecturally ambitious. In the competition phase, this was an image that was very important for us. It's a drawing made by Archigram in 1970. It's called The Instant City. And for us, it's a beautiful illustration how urbanity can come and how it can become a very imaginative place, even if it's only temporary. This is a drawing of the competition phase that we entered. It shows a couple of the principles that we wanted to apply. For instance, one of the ambitions was to make a big kind of public square facing the West Station in order to enlarge the very narrow pedestrian spaces that were surrounding the station. It also shows that somewhere on this parcel we wanted to create a cover structure with big arches, in a way referring to the archigram picture, a kind of ephemeric but yet monumental form that can give identity to this place. It also shows closed interior spaces which are constructed by containers, and it shows several types of exterior ludic places, and it also shows the ambition to give a place to the water on the site. This is a collage that somehow wanted to show how how architecture could work or how architecture could be applied in order to bring people together in a space that is covered yet exterior. These are some pictures from the design phase. So in the very beginning of the project, after we won the competition, we gathered with all the organizations who were selected to activate the place, and we developed together with them the project, because we are also very much convinced that architecture should be built together with your clients. Your clients can take many forms. Sometimes it's the person who pays. In this case, it was actually the people who were going to use it, and it was also the children who were going to come and play. And the way we developed the project, so we made a model where all these elements that we had shown in the competition, the arches, the containers, the ludic places, the water program, we kept it, we made it as pieces of model that were loose. So nothing was glued, and everything could be moved, could be multiplied, could change. And we somehow developed the project by talking to each other and by building the model together around the table. These are some pictures of the construction phase, so where we went to buy second-hand sea containers that were customized for use as interior spaces. This was the day of the installation of the containers, and a picture of the planting area in front of the public square that is attached to the station. The day that the arches were installed, which was an amazing moment. And the last part is, we also worked on the question of the water management of the site. So the site was covered with a big concrete plate. The soil under the concrete plate was polluted, so we could not touch this concrete plate. We had to leave it where it was. But with the help of the Brussels Environmental Office, we discovered that on a couple of places we could perforate the concrete plate, and that we could actually start creating a kind of water trajectory where the rainwater harvested on the roofs of the arches could be collected, brought to a collective rainwater tank, and then finally flowing over in a kind of designed river in a way where the rainwater finally can infiltrate into the soil. So the result is today that while waiting for this project to happen, the big master plan to happen, that is, before this concrete plate from the past is turned into a space of community, a space where children can meet in a safe environment, where they can experiment. So because we also try to create an architecture that was present, but also sufficiently absent, in the sense that the level of detailing is rather low, and is in a way also to open up the possibilities and the creativity of the users. They are allowed to adapt it. They are allowed to change things the way they want. Because anyhow, the general form of the arches and the containers is strong enough to survive a lot of temporary adaptations. But it's also a place where we try to bring the children closer to the environmental questions. So the question of harvesting water, harvesting rainwater, infiltrating it becomes an element of play. So the whole, in a way, the river we carved out of the concrete plate has become a water playground where children can come to play in summer where it's very hot in a ludic way, and yet, getting in touch with the environmental questions that we are facing. The second project I'm going to talk about is very different. It's a study on urban scale we did together with another agency in Brussels called Follow Architecture. And it was a study assignment commissioned by the Brussels regional government and the Flemish regional government, asking us how can the livable city look like from the water perspective. The area is located in the east of Brussels, so to give you an idea, this is the historical center of Brussels, and then you see lots of, in a way, ring figures, which are mainly traffic-oriented, and the white lines, they are representing the valley areas that are, in a way, structuring the topography of the city. So how can a livable city look like from the water perspective? And the study case we were zooming into was this particular river valley, which is called the Woluwe. As I already was explaining in the beginning, the world is changing. The world is changing very much related to the way we have been building. I think in the last 100 years, we have been building compared to former centuries at an extremely high pace, and this is having a gigantic impact today on our environment. More and more we are confronted to the fact that in this particular area that we are confronted to floodings. Moments of peak rain result into floodings of streets and people placing sandbags to protect their houses. But for the same sake, 2 months later, there is a problem of drought. All this water that we've seen is being pumped away into the rivers, it is being pumped away into the sewage, and actually very little of this water, because of the high degree of impermeabilization of the soil, very little of this water is actually percolating in the soil, which resulting into drought, which results into problems with agriculture, which becomes a problem for the development of the local biodiversity. And the last one is the pollution. The small rivers and brooks we have, in general, they have a very high degree of pollution due to the fact that still some spillover of the sewage is being dumped into the natural rivers, but also due to the high degree of fertilization. Fertilizers, for instance, we use in gardens, in agriculture, which is in a way creating very high acidity levels in the water, which is in a way demolishing a lot of the biodiversity. And all this is related to, it actually starts from an over-engineered system. Let me explain you a little bit about that based upon this drawing. So here, the blue lines, they show the natural river valleys as they used to be a long time ago. And the black lines, they're showing the sewage system. And you see that, well, you cannot see it very well because the image is not super sharp. But the way we have been dealing with our water in the last decades was very much a technical way. Instead of infiltrating the water in our gardens, using nature in a way as a sponge to store water, enlarging rivers to store the water that we want to keep, we actually have been separating this system, and we have been bringing it to technical solutions. So if you open up a street, for instance, in this area, you will find gigantic, almost cellars in a way, where stormwater can be kept for a couple of days. And also, if you look at the sections of the sewage, they are not anymore like this, but they have become the size of a room, so 2.50 meters wide and 2.50 meters high. It was comfortable for a long time because water was for a long time seen as a problem, and how do you treat the problem? With a technical solution. And the technical solution was enough for a lot of decades until now. Because now, due to climate change, actually these technical solutions, they are not sufficient any longer, and they're actually, they're not any longer a solution, but they have become part of the problem. And still, it's very important that we really consciously think about how we should deal with this water. To give you an idea, Belgium is located more or less on this spot in the center of Europe, and then this scale is giving the degree of water scarcity and the risk the risk of water scarcity in different areas of Europe. And then we see that this part of Belgium is dark red, which means we have the same risk of water scarcity as in the south of Spain or as in Italy, which is funny because people in general think in Belgium it's raining here all the time. How can it be that we have a water problem? But we have a water problem actually because of our over-engineered system. We are bringing everything immediately to the sea, and there goes this source of energy. What we tried to develop in this project was we tried to bring together different types of knowledge and to combine it with imagination into a strategy that links the questions of the healthy water system together with the questions and ambitions of a healthy living environment. And this drawing is in a way showing how we've been selecting in this large river valley, how we have been selecting 5 particular places, samples of city in a way, where we've been looking at it from 2 perspectives. The first perspective was the hydrogeology. So we have been studying, based upon maps that were already made beforehand by scientists, we were studying the hydrogeology, and this map is showing how the landscape can actually be read as places where, which are in general dry, the green spots where, which is called the seasonal wet places, and then the blue spaces are the permanent wet spaces. So we can actually look at the landscape as a place with different gradients of water sensitivity. This is what we in general don't see. It's under our feet. What we see is, what we see as architects in general, is what is the urban form. Also, we have been traveling around here in the country for a couple of days. I've seen a little bit the form and the morphology of the cities and the villages. Belgium is a country which is extremely diverse. It has been urbanized in a very liberal way, and by traveling 500 meters to the left or to the right, you might encounter completely types of urban typologies. And this is a selection of 6 of these typologies that we found in this area. Some are, let's say, the living dreams, which is like villa areas, but we could equally distinguish the big boxes, so places where industries are located, or in between land, which is, for instance, an example of small agricultural parcels, in a way remnants from the past that have been eaten up from the sites by all kinds of residential developments. So we try to look at this landscape from 2 perspectives, the soil, the hydrogeology, and the urban form. And we try to bring it together into projects that would bring back in a way to create new water places for encounter. Because this in a way was the driver. This was the dream. This is how this in a way environmental ambitions and urbanistical ambitions can be brought together into a collective dream, an ambition that anyone can feel. So we took our 5 samples, and in a way you can see a little bit how we're building up the drawing. So we took these 5 samples of city, and we started to draw them based upon the hydrogeological maps. So you can distinguish again the permanent wet, the seasonal wet, and the dry areas. And this is an example of one of a particular place on one of the samples. It's located here in the cluster of enterprises that we transformed into a water battery. So it was in a way an enterprise area in the neighborhood of the airport that was somehow abandoned, dealing with quite a bit of water issues. And the way what we try to develop there is an urbanistical framework that combines the environmental questions, so related to storing water, infiltrating water, keep it on its place, and finally spilling it over to the natural river, where we also wanted to make more space for storm water storage, but also combining it with more economic and social questions. For instance, what can you do with this kind of abandoned office buildings that are empty, and for instance, which kind of role can they play in the future city? For instance, one of the possible proposals we made was to make place there for evangelical churches, which are trying to find a place everywhere in the city, but which are in general not very welcomed. And this collage is in a way trying to show what could be the ambition. So how can we transform places like this, monofunctional, fighting water problems, how can we transform into more lively places where the questions of water can actually start to be combined with places of encounter. And the ambition of this project was not to build it right away. It was rather a project that is aiming at inspiring the different governments in order to act, but also to inspire the users and the landowners of this area to act. So what we did is we translated all the ideas we collected on the 5 samples. We collected it in a big grid, which is on the vertical lines you can see is organized according to the morphological, urbanistical forms, the types. And on the horizontal grids, it's organized according to the geomorphology of the soil. And every one of these squares, in a way, is containing a couple of, let's say, a set of strategies that can be applied in order to create this livable city based upon a healthy water system. So the final ambition of this project is not to solve one place, but to create a kind of a framework of strategies that can be applied in this area, but also in 1,000 other neighborhoods here, there, and perhaps even in Riga. Thank you.
Thank you, Bert, for this wonderful lecture. And as the last speaker of this lecture series, we have the city architect of Brussels, Kristiaan Borret. One of the reasons why I'm very happy to have Kristiaan Borret in Latvia is because he is used to do competitions, he's used to do well-planned work together with architects, and one of the results is that I have to say that the architecture in general in Belgium has been on a high level at the moment, and maybe that's thanks to the team of Kristiaan, and probably he will also tell a little bit more about that and how he managed to do that.
Thank you. Good evening also from my side. I'm very happy to be here. We have been enjoying 2 wonderful days, traveling through Latvia and discovering only the best of architecture. I will give you a presentation about the work of the bouwmeester, maître architect in Brussels. So it's not so much about projects, it's more about the governance system, the way that we try to stimulate good design, good urban design in Brussels, but also in general in Belgium. I've added some projects, and I want to make a plea for one topic that is very actual in Brussels now, that's adaptive reuse. So, bouwmeester, maître architect, it's something of a young tradition in Belgium. So it's not only in Brussels, it was created in something around 2000 in Flanders and Antwerp, then in Brussels, then also in the French-speaking part of Belgium in Charleroi, even in Ghent, a city of 300,000 inhabitants, so a kind of small or medium-scale city. And the French-speaking government of Wallonia has been promising that they would introduce a bouwmeester within their term. They didn't, so we can hope for the next term. In any case, when there will be a bouwmeester in Wallonia, then Belgium is covered and we are ready for export. What is the bouwmeester, maître architect, not doing? So, in my case, so I'm not the head of the general director of the planning administration. So the bouwmeester is also not responsible for the building permits and also not dealing just with the buildings or the projects of the government of Brussels itself. So it's close to the chief city architect, but it's not exactly the same thing as the chief city architect. I'm also not just a consultant, and I'm surely not a politician. So the bouwmeester is appointed by the government, but in an independent position. And the role is very general. The role is to improve the quality of all urban projects, in this case in Brussels. So it's a hybrid role, because you're working for the government, but in an independent position. So you could say, I'm paid to be critical. So it takes a strong government that dares to appoint a bouwmeester in order to improve the quality of the projects. That also means that the role of the bouwmeester is finding an equilibrium. It's like walking on a rope, because you have to be critical enough. Otherwise, why do you want to be a bouwmeester? But also, if you would do that every day and on every project, and especially in the newspaper all of the time, after a time, they will try to put you aside. And then, in fact, you're losing impact. So it's about finding this balance between being critical and being loyal. From time to time, I'm saying we, because there's a team of something like 15 people working within the administration that are, in fact, the team of the bouwmeester, and that are doing, together with me, all of these jobs. And so the bouwmeester is also appointed per term of 5 years. I'm in my second term now. A third term wouldn't be a good idea, so I will stopping at the end of next year, because from time to time you need a new bouwmeester so that new emphases can be made, that new accents can be developed. The appointment procedure is an open call with a commission of external experts and so it's very neutral and correct. What did we do? We have something like 3 pillars: competitions, research by design, and then the most classic thing, design review. So on competitions, I think this is the main tool that the bouwmeester has to improve quality. Competitions is something we use as a word, but perhaps for the specialists among you, it's in fact the term that we use for public procurement procedures. So according to the legislation of public procurement. So it's not a kind of open ideas competition. And in Belgium in general, since something like 10, 20 years, there has been developing quite an interesting culture of competitions. So as Manton was saying, I think this system of competitions in Belgium is partly responsible for the fact that there is a lot of good architects now, that they have got a lot of opportunities. Just to go a bit more in detail, perhaps, what do we consider as a good competition? Because when traveling around and seeing the projects here linked to the prize, to the award, sometimes it also was about how the architect has been designated, about procurement procedures. There seems to be a lot of differences, and not always also very elaborate procedures. Some of them could have been better. So the way that we do it in Belgium, and in the case of Brussels, we don't do it only for public authorities, for public clients, but also for private clients. So we are organizing some competitions with private developers. So in Brussels, we organize something like 50 competitions a year. Every week, a competition. So it's a tool with a lot of impact. First thing is, the program should be clear. The budget should be clear. The budget should be guaranteed. So never a competition that is completely open. Do something on this square. There is always a feasibility study before. There has been tests, what is the maximum density that we want. I think that the question should be clear if you want to be, that the answers are clear. The architect can respond to the brief of the competition in a better way if the brief of the competition is well formulated. The fee of the architect is always fixed. So there is no concurrence, no competition on the fee that the architect is asking. The only criteria for the winning architect is the quality of the project. It's always a two-step process. First step is a public call. All architects can apply with some references, and so you need some projects have been done before. And the second call, then there is a selection of something like 3 or 5 architects, and then the second step is making a design proposal, a competition proposal. For the first step, we really work a lot to have very low access criteria. Many public procurements, in my view, are problematic because, in fact, they want, for instance, if you need to build a swimming pool, they ask that you have been building 5 swimming pools before. That means it's always the same architects. And sometimes in the references, it isn't even checked whether those 5 swimming pools before were good swimming pools. I know some years ago, when we had this kind of old system of competition in Brussels, in fact, that meant, this kind of reference systems meant that you were officially allowed to build a bad swimming pool, the 6th one, but perhaps as bad as the former ones. So in our system now, it's also the quality of reference that is being judged. Are the projects that you've been building, are they interesting? Are they relevant for this job now? Also, we don't ask for turnover, so also small offices have the opportunity. If the project is, for instance, that has to be built in the competition is €1 million, we ask that you have been built, or that you have built already a project of 300,000 or 500,000 euro. So 30 to 50% of the new assignment. In order to enable also young offices to climb up the ladder and to have bigger projects, to open up the market. 3 or 5 candidates go to the next step. The next step is also paid, so you get a kind of payment for making the design proposal. There is always an oral presentation, and the jury is composed of professionals. Normally, no politicians in the jury. As I said, the award criteria, they are focused on quality, so not on the budget, not on the fee of the architect. And so to close, there is a lot of transparency on the jury. So the jury report is published. Also, we try now to convince the clients to publish all of the commissions, all of the submissions, so all of the competition entries are fully published. So there's a lot of debate, open debate, transparent debate on the competitions. That was a long read, but I think it's important. So it's the good competition culture in Belgium, I think, helped a lot, also young offices, to make interesting projects. Some examples. This is perhaps what you think about, an architectural gem, a very beautiful project, a passageway between 2 office buildings of the Belgian Parliament by Office Kersten Geers and David van Zeveren, a very refined object that also, there is a reason for the shape, because as you can see, this side is lower than that side, so you need to make a slope. The slope should be accessible for wheelchair people. If you make it curved in the shape of a circle, you have more length, and so that means that the slope was according to the standards. So the reason, one of the reasons for making the project is very functional at the same time. But there are many other projects, so you will see there are big projects, also small projects. I think it's important in the strategy of improving the quality of a city that you also have attention for small interventions, not just the big strategic projects, but also a multitude of many, many small projects. So this is one, a housing project by Versa, not more than 4 apartments, on a corner that was not built and that is finishing up that neighborhood. Or very similar, also in another neighborhood in Brussels, project by Low Architect, on a difficult corner that was empty, the kind of sites that private developers are not interested in, because it's too difficult. You can't make standard apartments. You have to think how to solve it. And so that's an ideal situation for young architects. It's not only about architecture, it's about public space. This is very close to the Palais de Justice in Brussels and next to the railway that is going straight to Brussels. A new public space that also interconnects with the outside space of a social housing block. A new playground in the middle of the city. Very small one. An existing bridge that was going over the park. Very frustrating because you couldn't go down from the bridge to the park. So the competition was about making a new staircase, well, a set of several of these staircases on several spots. Again, an example of how small interventions improve the city life, and also how small interventions deserve good design. Larger ones, these are in construction now. We've been working a lot in Brussels on providing space for manufacturing industry, for small productive companies, where things are being made, businesses. And at the same time, we have a high need for more housing because there has been a demographic growth. In this project, both are combined with here a small business park with space for the lorries and so on, and then partly on top of that, a housing project. And I think the interesting thing is that we've been exploring in many competitions, this is by Bogdan van Broek and DDS, is how to connect both worlds. Instead of cutting them and separating them, how to expose both worlds to each other while guaranteeing the quality of both worlds. Because productive space, productive economy in the city, we shouldn't push it out of the city. We should try to keep it in the city and integrate in the city. And again, it deserves a fine place in the city. It deserves good architecture. Two more, and then we'll go on. This is a competition on the former slaughterhouse of Brussels, where there are still, and they will remain, a lot of food processing companies. So again, productive economy. They will be on the ground floor, and they have a lot of refrigerators. They need a lot of cooling spaces. There is also a big food market in the area, and in the weekend we need a lot of parking. Therefore, there will be parking on the first floor with a mezzanine level that can be removed once in a better future than when we will need less parking space because there will be less cars. And then the idea was to do something with the roof. And so the owner of the place was very willing to do something with that roof. It's a semi-private owner. And the idea was to make a swimming pool over there because we don't have open-air swimming pools in Brussels anymore. And Brussels is a very dense city, so you just don't find easily space for an open-air swimming pool. And so there is now a subsidy, and so it will be made. There will be an open-air swimming pool on the roof of the parking, and the parking is on the roof of the food processing industry, and the swimming pool will be heated with the heat losses of the refrigerators of the food processing factory. So it's also, on the level of sustainability, a very interesting project. This kind of complexity of several programs and stacking is typical of Brussels, because we have no other choice. We don't have the land to expand. The city is built up, so we have to look and to search for this kind of new solutions. That was competitions. What we also do is research by design. That means in my team, you have 4 people who make drawings. And that is, making drawings is something that is not happening anymore in the administration. In most cases, the quality of a project, the decision, the political decision on a project or a building permit or a vision for the future, well, they are being discussed with Word documents, with Excel tables, with calculations of square meters, with density and rentability, and so on. I think it's important in policy that the drawing, that's our tool as architects, that it is being used to feed the debate. So that means those people in my team, they make drawings, images, maps, and so on, not to have it built by ourselves, but to feed the debate, to show what it means to have 30,000 square meters on a site, to show with the drawing how the future could also be something else, how the project could be an alternative solution. And so that's very helpful. That's really also, I think, our strength as architects and urban planners, imagination, as Bert said, in order to influence the debate. The last part of what we are doing is quite classical, in fact. So there is a design review. It's discussing on the quality of projects. There's one point that is, so in Brussels now, the legislation has been changed, and from now on, all projects above 5,000 square meters should have a design review approval by the bouwmeester. So that means that we have also impact on the private projects. You've understood. I think my job is about, not about power, but about soft power. It's about convincing, influencing, bringing ideas, not about deciding or not about, well, finally deciding, but trying to move people in a better direction. Brussels. As you can see, it's not a cute city. It's not harmonious. It's not Bruges, if you've been there at all, but it's even not something like Vienna. So this hodgepodge of all scales and styles, and these are European buildings, of course, it's the result of very bad urban planning politics in the past, kind of laissez-faire policy. So you could regret, but on the other hand, you have to, we know that it's there and it won't vanish, it won't disappear. So that's why I develop a kind of narrative that says, okay, let's accept it. This is about complexity. And Brussels is complexity. And the future will be complex. So let's embrace the complexity. Let's try to make something out of it. This has also a lot of potential. There is no uniformity. There is no light culture. A lot of things are possible. And moreover, you should know, Brussels is an extremely diverse city. So in my city, so to speak, I am the minority. I am the child of 2 Belgian parents. While in my city, in Brussels, 66% of the inhabitants were not born in Belgium or have one parent that was not born in Belgium. So the majority of the people in Brussels has an immigration background. That's why I think we also should, in Brussels, adapt our idea of the real Brussels guy and so on, because the real Brussels guy is someone who's not from Brussels, who's from elsewhere, and who came to live in this city and who loves this city because they can see that there are a lot of people coming from everywhere. So what we are sharing is the fact that we are not from here. And so that's another narrative that is quite important and that we are really struggling with, and that is not enough, I think, represented in the way that we conceive of architecture and urban planning in Brussels. But then, of course, you understand, in fact, this kind of architectural diversity is in fact a gift. It very much suits us. If the city is diverse in social terms, then it's a good idea that the city would be also diverse in architectural terms. So I think the strength of Brussels and the way why Brussels is attractive for me as a city is exactly this kind of no rules, less rules, full of potential, many things are possible. That's, I think, also the future of many European cities. We are all evolving towards that kind of complexity, and that's something that we should embrace in urban planning. I want to close with one topic. So there are several topics, and I could show you many things about Brussels. But one is very much, we are trying with the Bouwmeester, trying to put a lot of emphasis now to, in fact, to also apply it in regulations and so on, and that's about adaptive reuse. So this is an image by Rotor. Rotor is a collective of architects who, something like 10 years already, put on the agenda that idea that we shouldn't throw away building materials, that we should stop demolishing buildings and just replacing them by a new one, but that we should try to reuse materials and reuse buildings. Sometimes because of aesthetic reasons. So these are people of Rotor helping to demount beautiful marble in order to reuse it. So sometimes it's about the cherry on the cake materials, but it's also for sustainability reasons. Construction sector is, of course, responsible for a lot of CO2 emissions, carbon emissions. So let's try to reduce that by reusing buildings and by stopping to demolish buildings. In fact, it's perhaps something that we have lost. This is an image from the 1930s of a building in Brussels, the Palais de Granvelle, which is a 17th century palace that was demolished for construction works. The new railway had to go through. And then if you could read this, you would see that there is a small board that says façade à vendre, facade to sell. So in those times, early 20th century and at the end of the 19th century, buildings were used, building materials were sold. There was a market developed in order to reuse those materials. Parts of the facade you could buy, but also, for instance, the timber that is being exposed in front was being sold in order to be used elsewhere. I think it's this kind of market, this kind of mechanism that we should try to reactivate again. 3 projects that show it. This is a sociocultural organization, Zinneke, that is housed in several of these buildings. And there is also on the back side, there is a big industrial workshop where they have their new ateliers and workshops. It's a project by Western Rotor. You can see how they reuse. This is a staircase that is coming from elsewhere with a new railing. You get a kind of mix in the architecture of old and new things. But the most interesting thing is this is the back facade, where you have that strange window. this was a breakthrough in the Brussels bureaucracy of building permits. Because the architects, as they were working with reused windows coming from other sites, they didn't know on beforehand which kind of window that they should receive. And so the building permit application was with a dotted line saying, here there will be a window. Not clearly drawing the window exactly in the way as it is now. That was, for the building permit application administration, really a problem, because they want you to be completely precise. They only accepted it once because it was competition, because it was a social-cultural organization, and because it was the back facade, so not the front facade. And of course, then the architects made a joke of it, and when they finally received the window, they put it upside down, something that probably would never have got a building permit. But it shows, if we as public authority want that there is more reuse, then it's not just the architects and the contractors who have to change, it's also ourselves, who will have to change. We will have to adapt our usual systems in order to allow more solutions for more sustainability in building projects. Second project is by Aqua. This is a prefab concrete office building from the 1960s that got empty. And there is a huge need of schools. So one school decided, okay, we will use this building and we will try to reorganize it very quickly. We organized the competition. The base was all right because it's using an office building that was empty and abandoned for something new, and especially for a school. But then the architects proposed not just, of course, working in the building, but also reusing all of the partition walls that were in the building and recombining them in order to make new classrooms and adding some other materials in order to make the distinction. So these are the old ones and these are the new ones. So the lesson here is that a lot of reuse starts with inventories, about knowing what is available, that there is a lot of work on that side to be done by the architect. Again, this was a competition, this was a public client. So what is at stake now in Brussels is to try to mainstream this kind of approach. Because in sustainability, it's not about pilot projects, about pioneering projects. This is the minority. It's about having a systemic change, about changing the entire organization of the building industry. And so that's why in Brussels now we will try to integrate this need for reuse of buildings in the new building code. Before, you could just demolish a building and no one was asking you, why do you demolish it? Is it really necessary? We were immediately looking at what is the new building. Is it complying with the building code? In the future building code of Brussels, the rule will be, in general, buildings have to be kept. If you want to demolish it, you have to prove that there are no other solutions. You have to make calculations, carbon analysis, and so on. So I hope that that will have a huge impact on the market. Because this is, as I said in the beginning, changing a city is of course about big projects, but also about having attention for a multitude of small interventions. What I just told you about the building code is also about this. Changing a small rule can have a big difference because it is being repeated for many, many projects. So the next big thing will be probably a lot of small things. Thank you.